Hello, everyone, and welcome. In the previous video, we explored the birth of sports. In this video, we will delve into the origins of modern sports, examining how the sports we love today came to be, the reasons behind standardized rules, and the inventors of sports competitions as we know them. To answer these questions, we must travel back in time to the mid-1800s. So, get ready for this fantastic journey. Before discussing the birth of the modern sports era, it is important to understand what came before. In the pre-industrial era, sports existed, but they were completely different from what we know today. During the Middle Ages and the pre-modern era, physical activities were primarily associated with three contexts: military training, popular festivals, and aristocratic pastimes. The concept of sports as we know them today, regulated, standardized activities with organized competitions and impartial referees, did not exist. Consider medieval football in England, also known as folk football. It was a chaotic and violent game involving entire villages. There were no written rules, and the number of players was undefined. The goal was simply to carry a ball from one point to another across the territory, often using whatever means necessary. Games could last for days, and injuries were common. Similarly, other sports were practiced in primitive forms. Wrestling, boxing, and foot racing existed, but without uniform regulations. Every city and region had its own variations and traditions. There were no championships, rankings, or official records. The aristocratic class had its own exclusive pastimes, such as fox hunting, horseback riding, and fencing. However, these activities were more expressions of social status than actual sports. The concept of competitive sports as we know them today, based on merit, performance, and objective measurement of results, was practically non-existent. Everything changed with the Industrial Revolution. Between the late 1700s and early 1800s, England underwent a radical transformation, followed gradually by the rest of Europe and the world. Factories sprang up everywhere, and cities grew at a dizzying pace. Millions of people left the countryside to work in urban industries, and a new social class was born, the urban working class. With it came a new industrial and commercial bourgeoisie with the free time and economic resources to invest in entertainment and education. The Industrial Revolution created the perfect conditions for the birth of modern sports in at least four fundamental ways. First, urbanization. Concentrating large masses of people in cities created demand for new forms of entertainment and leisure. Old rural folk festivals no longer made sense in urban contexts. Second is the regulation of time. In factories, time became rigidly structured. There is clearly defined work time and leisure time. This division creates space for organized recreational activities. Third is transportation. The invention of the railroad was crucial because, for the first time in history, teams and athletes could travel quickly from one city to another. This made intercity competitions, national tournaments, and championships possible. Fourth is communication. Mass media and low-cost newspapers allowed sports news, results, and rankings to be disseminated, creating a shared sporting culture. However, there is a fifth element that is perhaps the most important: Victorian ideology. In 19th century England, the idea of muscular Christianity spread. This ideology saw sports as a means of building character, discipline, and team spirit. Sports became an educational tool, not just entertainment. Modern sports were born in schools. English public schools, which were actually elite private schools such as Eton, Rugby, Harrow, and Winchester, played a fundamental role. In these schools, sports became an integral part of education. However, there was a problem: each school played by its own rules. When students finished school and went to universities like Cambridge and Oxford or entered the workforce, they wanted to continue playing. However, how can you organize a game when half the players have learned one set of rules and the other half have learned a different set? The solution was codification, writing clear, standard rules that everyone accepted. That is exactly what happened. On October 26, 1863, 11 clubs and schools gathered at the Freemasons' Tavern in London and established the Football Association, the world's first soccer federation. What was their goal? To create a universal set of soccer rules. The discussions were heated, with the main point of contention being whether players could use their hands. Could they tackle their opponents? Some clubs, influenced by the traditions of rugby school, insisted that players could pick up the ball with their hands and tackle opponents. Others wanted a game based mainly on footwork. Ultimately, the dribbling game, vision prevailed, and modern soccer was born, a game in which touching the ball with your hands is prohibited, except for the goalkeeper. Those who wanted to maintain the more physical rules and the use of hands formed the Rugby Football Union in 1871. Thus, two distinct sports were born, soccer and rugby. Soccer wasn't the only sport to be codified. In 1877, the rules of cricket were standardized, and modern tennis was born when Major Walter Clopton Wingfield patented a game called Spheristyke in 1874. This game quickly evolved into lawn tennis, and the first Wimbledon tournament was held in 1877. Athletics was also systematized. The Amateur Athletic Club, founded in 1866, established uniform rules for running, jumping, and throwing. For the first time, records could be compared and officially recognized. Once codified, modern sports spread rapidly beyond the British Isles, following the routes of the British Empire and international trade. British sailors, merchants, and engineers introduced soccer, cricket, and rugby to every corner of the globe. In South America, British immigrants founded the Gimnasia La Plata Club in Argentina in 1887 and the Genoa Cricket and Football Club in Italy in 1893. The spread was not only geographical, however. There was also a fundamental social transformation, with sports moving from an amateur pastime to a professional, commercial phenomenon. To compete, football clubs began paying the best players. In 1885, the Football Association legalized professionalism, and professional football was born. 2 years later, in 1888, the world's first football championship with a round-robin format was founded, the Football League. Professionalism brought other innovations, such as dedicated stadiums, admission tickets, merchandising, and organized fan clubs. Sports became an industry, entertainment, and business. However, not all sports immediately embraced professionalism. Tennis, for example, remained amateur until the 1960s. Rugby union retained its amateur status until 1995. Meanwhile, new sports were emerging. In 1891, James Naismith, a Canadian physical education teacher, invented basketball. He was looking for an indoor activity for his students during the harsh Massachusetts winters. Volleyball followed in 1895, created by William Morgan. However, the true symbol of the birth of modern sports is the modern Olympic Games, the event that represents this revolution more than any other. Pierre de Coubertin, a French aristocrat who believed that sports could promote international peace, came up with the idea. At the Sorbonne Congress in Paris in 1894, Coubertin proposed recreating the ancient Greek Olympic Games in a modern form. The idea was received with enthusiasm, and the International Olympic Committee was founded. It was decided that the first modern Olympic Games would be held in Athens in 1896. In April 1896, athletes from 14 countries gathered in Athens to compete in 43 events in 9 sports. While it was not the Olympics we know today, with only 241 male athletes and rather improvised organization, it was still a historic moment. Spiridon Lewis, a Greek water seller, won the marathon and became a national hero. The Olympics became a regular event after his success. The subsequent Olympics in Paris, 1900, St. Louis, 1904, and London, 1908, consolidated the format and gradually added sports and participating nations. Women made their debut in 1900, although initially in only a few disciplines. The Olympics represent the pinnacle of international sports. They create a universal language, shared rules, and common values. Athletes from different nations, often in political conflict, compete according to the same rules and are judged by the same criteria. As modern sports developed, they quickly became much more than just games. It becomes a central element of social, national, class, and gender identity. For the working class, sports become a form of community belonging and pride. Football clubs are often linked to factories, neighborhoods, and religious communities. Supporting one's team becomes a way of expressing local identity in an increasingly industrialized and alienating world. For nations, sports become tools for international prestige. Sporting victories are celebrated as national triumphs, and champions become heroes and symbols of their nation's character and superiority. However, sports are also fields of exclusion and discrimination. Women are largely excluded and considered too fragile for athletic competition. When they begin to play sports, they face enormous resistance and prejudice. The 1896 Olympics excluded women. Even when women were admitted in 1900, they were only allowed to participate in sports deemed appropriate for women, such as tennis and golf. Racial barriers were also evident. In the United States, sports were segregated for decades. Professional baseball excluded black players until 1947. In apartheid South Africa, sports remained segregated until the 1990s. Sports reflect the inequalities of society, but also gradually become battlegrounds for civil rights and equality. What has this sporting revolution left us with? First is the concept of modern sports, which are regulated, competitive physical activities based on written, standardized rules. Second are organizational structures, such as national and international federations, championships, cups, and rankings. Third are sporting values such as fair play, team spirit, and the value of fair competition. Although these ideals are sometimes violated, they remain the fundamental principles of sport. Fourth is sport as an industry. From an amateur pastime, sport has become one of the world's most important economic sectors, generating billions of dollars and employing millions of people. The birth of modern sport also teaches us something deeper. It shows us how society and technology can transform the simplest human activities, running, jumping, and throwing a ball, into global phenomena like modern soccer. It demonstrates how social and economic changes can create entirely new forms of culture and entertainment. It also shows us how institutions and rules can transform chaos into order, violence into regulated competition, and a local pastime into a global phenomenon. The birth of the modern sports era was not a single event, but rather a complex process involving social, economic, technological, and cultural transformations. This story continues today. Sports continue to evolve, adapting to technological and social changes. Esports, video assistant referees (VAR) in soccer, and new Olympic disciplines are all chapters in the same story that began in English public schools and London taverns in the 19th century. I hope you enjoyed this journey through the birth of modern sports. If you found the video useful, please like it and subscribe to the channel. What sports do you play? How do you think sports will evolve in the coming decades? Let me know in the comments. See you in the next video.